President Barack Obama is on his way to the Czech capital of Prague for the signing. Russia's Dmitry Medvedev arrived in the city on Wednesday. The leaders will sign a deal replacing the original Strategic Arms Treaty, or START, which expired in December. The first START treaty was signed in 1991. Russia and the US agreed to reduce nuclear arsenals built up during the Cold War by 1/3. In 1993, more cuts were promised. START 2 was drafted by US President George Bush Sr. and Russia's Boris Yeltsin, but it stalled after disagreement over the US missile defense system. 9 years later came the Strategic Offensive Reductions Treaty, also called the Moscow Treaty. It was signed by then-Presidents George Bush and Vladimir Putin. But President Obama's speech in Prague last year signaled a new turning point. Neave has more.
This is what the disarmament process will look like. Intercontinental ballistic missiles returned to their factories and dismantled piece by piece. Nuclear warheads taken apart and their radioactive material recycled. Both Russia and the US have 7 years to meet their targets.
The warhead is removed from the missile is destroyed, or it's a bomber or something, or a cruise missile. The warhead, they remove the detonators, then they remove the the explosive. The uranium can be used for producing power in American nuclear power stations.
One of the most important parts of the treaty will be 18 yearly inspections. Each side will send teams to count the number of remaining warheads and deployed missiles and examine dismantlement facilities. There'll also be an exchange of missile test data for 5 flights every year. It sounds like a relatively straightforward procedure, but the treaty isn't 4 months late for nothing. Concerns about how the disarmament process will be monitored could critically affect how fast lawmakers are prepared to ratify it. Russia is currently revamping its crumbling armed forces and testing new missiles. It's reluctant to compromise this sensitive data by sharing it with the Americans. There's also nothing in the treaty to stop a US missile defense system in Europe. And already the Kremlin says it will pull out of the new treaty if the system's deemed a threat.
The Russian Federation will have the right to withdraw from the new treaty if the growth of the potential of the US strategic anti-missile defense starts exerting substantial influence on Russian strategic nuclear forces. It goes without saying that we ourselves will determine the degree of this influence.
The world has changed significantly since Presidents George Bush and Mikhail Gorbachev initiated the START Treaty in 1991, an agreement that secured an end to the nuclear arms race. 19 years on, and Russia and America's arsenals are only a fraction the size they were during the Cold War. Now the renewal agreement, created to cut both atomic warheads and the bombers, submarines and missiles that launch them, is not so much a nuclear reductions treaty as it is a vital step in confidence building. Neave, Jazeera, Moscow.